digital single market strategy was adopted. And, okay, thank you. Thanks. The aim of this digital single market strategy was to allow for a better access for both consumers and businesses to online goods and services. Now that's, as such, it's an ambitious goal. How efficient a digital single market in Europe can become very much depends on various aspects. We could talk about three pillars here. Obviously, one needs to allow for a better access to the websites, better access to the services for consumers and businesses. This covers everything that relates to e-commerce, parcel delivery, as you already mentioned, geo-blocking measures, I will talk about those too, copyright, VAT, all the regulatory context and everything that must be there together to allow for a better access to online goods and services. But that's not enough. Obviously, there is also a need for the right digital environment, the right conditions for digital networks, digital telecom, media services that need to be available. I'm here talking about the high-speed secure infrastructures and services, availability of Wi-Fi, also in public areas, investments in high-capacity networks, etc. So that environment must accompany the regulatory context on the access to those services. And of course, there is the economy and society that must be able to follow and maximize the growth potential of digital economy. This means improving people's skills to work in a digital environment. This also means focusing more on standardization of technologies, on the interoperability of systems and devices, etc. So all these three pillars need to improve and work together to be able to come to a truly functioning digital single market in Europe. A couple of figures here that were already somewhat mentioned. Here you can see the evolution of e-commerce in total commerce here. This stops in 2016. The growth is a year-to-year growth, constant growth. We must be more around 25% of all e-commerce, all commerce that is going through e-commerce today, that is going online. Here, this is about the growth of e-commerce in terms of population. So the green one is the 55 to 74-year-old population, and the others are below 55. You can see that all that is below 55 is catching up very quickly. We have more than 70% of those people below 55 who would at least sometime go and shop online. But even the population below 55 is largely above 50% of those that would, for that population, also sometimes go and shop online. In the digital single market strategy, well, as you can understand, there are many different measures, many different steps that need to be put together and work together for the digital single market to better function. These are a couple of legislative measures that have already been adopted. Geo-blocking regulation, I will talk a little bit about that one, that will apply very soon in a couple of days in the EU. Regulation on cross-border parcel delivery, VAT package for e-commerce in particular, the review of regulation on consumer protection rules, revised directive on payment services, payment accounts. Obviously, I will not talk about all of this. I will go a bit into the geo-blocking regulation in particular. And I will come to what I know best, that is the competition law aspects of e-commerce, and how competition law can contribute beyond the legislative context, can contribute to a better functioning e-commerce and digital single market. Because what happens is that you have the legislative actions that can best target the public or regulatory barriers. So when people don't buy online or don't trade online, it can have various reasons. If it has reasons such as, the VAT rules are too complicated, or the consumer law doesn't protect me, or I don't know if that protects me enough, then that's regulatory type of barrier. That's a legislative action that must be taken so that the laws are harmonized and the people know how to deal with cross-border trade, online trade. But there are also other barriers that are the private, the company-erected barriers to e-commerce that are also very important. And this is more the competition law that is dealing with those types of barriers. This is why in the context of the digital single market strategy, it was decided within those measures to also run a sector inquiry into e-commerce, and that's what we in DG Competition, the European Commission, we were doing. The sector inquiry is really a tool that allows us to, without focusing on a particular case, to look into what's happening in the sector. So there, the purpose is to get an overview about the prevailing market trends in e-commerce, to see what are the most frequent practices that restrict the evolution of e-commerce and the competition in e-commerce, and then also to better focus our own enforcement measures on those cases that typically most restrict or most frequently restrict competition in e-commerce sectors. There, the study, the final report was published in May 2017. We indeed received many, more than 1,000 retailers answered our questions from all over the EU. We had answers by hundreds of manufacturers in all the different sectors of industry. We had answers from nearly 90 price comparison websites, also marketplaces, payment system providers, etc. Let me just mention a couple of most interesting trends that we could observe as to how the barriers to e-commerce evolved. So what happened is that obviously the stakeholders quickly realized that e-commerce allowed for businesses to swiftly reach customers, right? So you can quickly, easily create your online web shop, whatever, and go and reach your consumers or reach other businesses online. It is also clear that the online price transparency is a very important feature, and the competition that is ongoing in e-commerce is an increased competition, in particular on price. So these features led to an impact on the distribution strategies that one can observe as compared to the pre-e-commerce era. And in particular, what happens is these trends, if I wanted to regroup them, manufacturers are very much present and selling their own products directly to the consumers. So they started competing with their own retailers online. Most of I will tell you a bit of the statistics of this. Many of the manufacturers indeed started to sell their products in competition with their own distributors to reach consumers also by themselves online. The second trend is this selective distribution system. So this allows manufacturers to somehow control how their products are being distributed. Because with e-commerce, everybody could start selling basically any product online, and prices were going into all directions. So we could observe that manufacturers were a bit nervous about this and tried to somehow control what was happening with their products online. So they tried to introduce and rely more on these selective distribution systems that allow for the manufacturers to set some criteria and choose their own distributors on the basis of those criteria. And third is fairly widespread reliance on restrictions between manufacturers and their distributors. These can go into pricing restrictions, so that this price erosion, the quick price decrease that can be observed online is somehow controlled. Restrictions regarding where the retailers could sell the product, so that they should not sell, for instance, in certain territories, or restrictions regarding online sales, so that, for instance, products should not be sold online or should not be sold via certain channels like marketplaces online. A couple of features about what most relevant features the different stakeholders of e-commerce found was for them in e-commerce. We asked all the different stakeholders as to what they found was the most important parameter for them to compete in e-commerce. And for manufacturers, here you can see the drivers. So the first, the blue one, is the most important factor for manufacturers to compete. Most important for them is the quality of their products to be good and win in competition with others. The second most important feature is the brand consideration, so that the position of their brand, their brand image is being protected. The third most important feature is the innovative nature, the novelty of their products. The fourth most important feature is the pre-sale after-sale services that go together with their products and reach consumers. And only the fifth is price. We ask the same questions to pure online retailers. And here is what you can see, unsurprisingly. The most important features for them to sell online is the price of the product that they sell. The second most important feature is the range of brands that they are able to sell online. Then the availability of the latest models. The fourth is the quality of the product that they sell. And only the last one in those 6 that we proposed was the customer service that go with the products that they sell online. So one can sense that there is a mismatch. There is a mismatch between what counts for manufacturers when they see their products appearing online, and between what counts for the pure online retailers when they sell those products online. This obviously impacts manufacturers' strategies, and they took some measures as to the question is really how do you react as a manufacturer to the growth of e-commerce? And this is what we observed. So, as I already said, not surprisingly, more than 60 or 64% opened their own online shop, which means that, as I said, they are trying to reach out to customers by themselves in competition with their own retailers. The second is admitting pure online distributors to their network. 55% changed their strategies and they opened up and admitted pure online retailers to their network. I must say that the other side of the same coin is that actually about 45% do not allow pure online retailers in their network, in their distribution network. So we observed a lot of those manufacturers that actually exclude from their retail network those players that are pure online distributors. Then you see an increased support for the online shops, but also an increased support for the brick-and-mortar shops. There is obviously a concern regarding the free riding questions. I'm not going to discuss this, but of course many manufacturers are also worried about the free riding that customers could go and showroom in the brick-and-mortar shops, ask for services, try the product, feel the product, sense the product, and then go and shop online. And obviously it has a cost. And that's also a consideration that is important for the manufacturers, and to see how they can somehow deal with this free riding concern between brick and mortar and online shopping. Then, an increase in the selective distribution systems again, and I think these were the most interesting observations here. Now we asked, obviously, that's very interesting for us, what were the most important contractual restrictions where retailers felt that they were restricted when they want to go and sell their products online. They are feeling restricted by certain measures in their contractual terms with their manufacturers. And there you can see that there are a lot of pricing limitations, whether recommendations on the prices or actually fixing the prices, which is obviously in breach of competition law. There are also limitations as to whether the retailer has the right to go and sell the product on marketplaces. We have 18%, that's an average for EU. 80% of the contracts reviewed more or less 8,000 distribution agreements, where there are limitations for the retailer to sell the products online, on marketplaces. Limitations to sell cross-border, there we had an average of 11%. Or limitations to sell on own websites, or to list the product on price comparison tools, etc. I think that I will have to talk for a couple of minutes about algorithms and pricing algorithms, because when we talk about e-commerce, I would think that it's really difficult to avoid at least mentioning algorithms and pricing algorithms. In particular, the competition concerns that algorithms may generate are important concerns, and these are being discussed in OECD and not in other fora, because they we must remain vigilant regarding what happens with algorithm. This is new, and we just have to see what impact they have. This is what we learned from the sector inquiry in 2016, so there the figures are probably much more important already today. When we asked them, and we asked also the smallest retailers to the biggest retailers, now obviously this is an average, so if you go into the biggest retailers, then obviously the figures will be much higher. But overall, on average, we had more than half of the retailers that were tracking the online prices of the other retailers. We had more than 2/3 of these that were using automatic software programs to track other retailers. And we had nearly 80% of those who track others' prices who could also automatically adjust their prices to the observed prices, or according to the observed prices of other retailers. And we also know that approximately 1/3 of the manufacturers also systematically track the resale prices of their products online. Now this means that there is an increased monitoring of the prices online, both between the competitors on the retail level and also by the manufacturers. And this also means that these pricing algorithms can well be used, and we know from our cases also that they are used to detect deviations from any kind of price fixing, whether it's between competitors or whether it's for the manufacturers that wants to fix the price at which this product should be sold. But the detection of the deviation from that price is very easy today with the pricing algorithms. What happens, just is a bit more, just the feeling of it, how it works today. If you're a manufacturer, and we observe that in our cases, and if you want to, you see that the prices online are decreasing, it's fairly easy for them. They need to identify who is this price maverick, usually a smaller player who will bring the prices down, and they have to contact, and if they contact that one or two small retailers that drag the prices down and convince them or pressure them to increase the price, then with the pricing algorithms, what happens is that it's enough for the manufacturer to pressure those one or two that were at the beginning of the price increase. And if those then quickly increase the price, then the pricing algorithms of the others will immediately pick up the new price. And little by little, actually fairly quickly, within a couple of hours, potentially the whole online network of the manufacturer may be aligned to the new price, or pick up the new price and adjust to the new price depending on how others want to adjust to the new price. But obviously this will drag the prices up. So as well as it can prices can quickly go down, prices can also quickly go up if there is an intervention into the natural erosion of the price online. Which is why, for us, I think it's important to keep in mind simply that by these algorithms obviously bring immediate benefits to consumers because of the prices and the very strong price competition online, they can also lead to a broader impact of price interventions than without the algorithms, which is why we must be vigilant indeed and observe the impact of those algorithms. Different issue, cross-border sales restrictions. Obviously this is really at the heart of the digital single market strategy and e-commerce to be able to sell cross-border. We know from the sector inquiry at that time we had 38% of the retailers who answered that they were indeed collecting location data for geo-blocking purposes. Geo-blocking, I mean to prevent access to their website for customers from other member states, to reroute customers to the website of their own member state, to refuse delivery or to refuse payment, etc. So all this is in, and we know that a lot of traders do collect location data and other place of establishment, etc. data for those purposes. These are the figures from different member states. I think for Greece we did not have enough answers to consider them as statistically relevant, so I can't give you the figure, sorry, any reliable figure for Greece. So you can see that the ratios are different from one member state to another, but still, on average, we had between 11 and 12% of those retailers that acknowledged that they had contractual restrictions from their manufacturers to sell their products cross-border. Now, what happens with these cross-border sales restrictions is that when it is based on a unilateral business decision of the trader. So I'm a retailer and I say, I just want to sell in Greece. I don't want to sell anywhere else. This, under competition law rules, there is nothing, so it doesn't fall under competition law rules. Competition law steps in when there is a dominant company or when there is an agreement that restricts the ability of the retailer to do what it wants for the sake of the product, to sell cross-border or to sell at a certain price or to sell online, etc. So what matters here is legislation. And here I would tell a couple of words about this geo-blocking regulation, precisely because it will apply as of the 3rd of December, so in a couple of days now. It is a very important piece of legislation. It is prohibiting unjustified geo-blocking, both unilateral, so if I'm a trader and I take my decisions on my own, and based on agreements. And this means, the main rule basically, is that traders shall not apply different conditions of access to their goods and services for reasons related to the nationality, the place of residence, or the place of establishment of the customer. What does this mean? It means that for the sale of goods, so if you are selling your goods online, then you must allow for the access to your website for the sale of the goods to any consumer from any member state, independent of their nationality or place of residence, etc. This is without physical delivery, so this is what we call shop like local. Traders are not forced by this regulation to deliver their goods to other countries. But if you have a shop, a web shop in Greece, and that there is a Spanish consumer who wants to buy on your online web shop in Greece, this Spanish consumer must be able to do so. It must be able to connect to the Greek website and to transact on the Greek website and take care of the delivery. If you don't deliver, it's none of your business, but the consumer can take care of the delivery, but it must be able to transact on that German website without discrimination because of its place of residence or nationality or whatever. It also means the access to the sale of electronically supplied services, cloud services is the same, so it's not only for physical goods, but also for any kind of services that one would offer on a website in a member state. And also it applies to services provided in a specific location in a member state. So if you offer tickets for a sports event or a concert or a car rental, or as that's here, hotel accommodation, the same applies. People must be able to buy the ticket from anywhere in the EU and then come here, obviously, for you don't have to go there and deliver your concert in another country, but still you must allow anybody from other countries to come here and enjoy your concert. What this means in terms of geo-blocking is that you cannot block access to your website, so that the traders in any member state, obviously, they cannot block the access to the website. They cannot reroute the customer. So if there is an Italian website, and the same shop also runs a French website, and that there is a French person who identifies that, I don't know, there's a better offer on shoes on the Italian website, or it's cheaper, or whatever. And so it wants to connect to the Italian website. Then the Italian website cannot, once it recognizes that it's a French PC that connects, it cannot, without the consent of the consumer, redirect the consumer to the French website. So I, as French, have to be able to buy on the Italian website if that's what I wish to do. Then I can be asked, would you want to be redirected to the French website? But if my answer is no, then I have to be able to purchase on the Italian website. And discrimination during payment, very important, of course. This means that traders are free to choose whatever payment means they want to accept. But once they made their choice, then within that range of means of payments, they cannot discriminate. So they cannot say that, if I accept, Visa cards, then Visa cards from another country I cannot accept. Or so they have to choose, they are free to choose whatever payment methods they take, but once they decide it and take it, they cannot discriminate based on nationality or place of residence. This regulation will be reviewed, evaluated, so the impact on the internal market will be evaluated in 2 years' time after the third assembly. So, marketplaces. I also cannot just conclude my speech without a couple of words about platforms, marketplaces. These marketplaces are business models that are very much on the rise. They intermediate between the different stakeholders, between businesses to business platform and business to consumer platforms. You also have between the businesses and the consumers. They are particularly important for small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe. You can see that all I don't know if actually you can see, but in all categories of turnover for retailers, they do use marketplaces. So the blue is the share of the turnover, is the share of the retailers that sell on marketplaces. So in each turnover category you have a lot. But what we also know is that the small players are much more dependent on marketplaces because simply they are less likely to also sell via their own online shops. So many of them would sell less on online shops or actually partially only sell via marketplaces. And they will also typically achieve a much higher proportion of their turnover via marketplaces than via other channels. We also know that 89% of professional sellers generate less than 50,000 euros revenues on marketplaces, which means that actually, irrespective of member states, there is a particularly high number of small retailers on those marketplaces generating very smaller revenues. However, there are differences. This is the channels, sales channels that are being used. We have still around 60%, this was 2016, but 60% of all retailers that were selling only via their own shops, but still about 1/3 of retailers that are selling both in parallel via marketplaces and their online shops, and about 4% that sell only via marketplaces. The differences are huge between member states. You have more than 60% of retailers that would sell on marketplaces in Germany, whereas the proportions are much smaller in other countries. The highest three countries are Germany, UK and Poland, actually, where retailers would mostly go and sell on marketplaces. We also have marketplaces. So what this is about, this is about a very debated issue as to whether, and I'll be brief on that one, is just to mention there was a big debate as to whether manufacturers must be free to prohibit the sale of their products on marketplaces. That's a big issue because obviously manufacturers were fairly concerned about some of the marketplaces where they didn't want their products to appear. And this was decided recently by the Court of Justice, which sided with the manufacturers. You can see that actually the retailers, that these restrictions are different from one member state to the other. Not surprisingly, in Germany there are lots of contracts where manufacturers restricted the ability of retailers to sell the products on marketplaces, and even overall in the EU, nearly 20% of retailers are having contractual restrictions to sell the products on marketplaces. And so, as I said, the Court of Justice very recently sided with the manufacturers and said that yes, manufacturers had to remain free to decide how to sell their products online and need to keep the freedom to consent or to reject the possibility for retailers to put and list their products on marketplaces. So this means that internet sales restrictions are forbidden under competition law, so it means that you, as a manufacturer, you cannot prohibit as such your products being sold online. So this is for e-commerce, obviously it's very important. So absolute internet sales restrictions are forbidden, but the restrictions to sell on certain channels online and to choose the channels that best fit your distribution strategies, that's not forbidden. And so manufacturers are indeed free to choose a bit how they want it to be present online. This is basically my last slide here on enforcement. Obviously, with all of these, and I just went through a couple of most interesting features, but all of these are obviously also very important in addition to the legislative part of it for digital markets barriers to be identified, and where we identified that there were important barriers for e-commerce to further develop. There we also have to focus our enforcement measures. Which is also why now I'm not going to read this through, but if you're interested, you can look into those cases. We have enforcement measures. These are resale price maintenance cases we just closed recently, and there are other cases that are ongoing, well, cross-border sales restrictions, territorial restrictions, or actually the quota price discrimination is also related to discrimination based on nationality and place of residence. So just to conclude, I would say that really digitalization and online trade and the enhanced role of platforms are greatly changing the market conditions, changing the competitive environment. The legislative measures and the competition enforcement measures are being identified to really best tackle those practices that may most harm consumer welfare and the functioning of the single market. The Commission is really trying to step up enforcement where it's most important, where the restrictions are most widespread. And I want to mention that as many of these restrictions and these situations relating to platforms and legislation, etc., are actually very new concerns also for us. We find it very important to keep a very strong dialogue with the authorities of member states, which we do. For member states to have a common approach and a harmonized interpretation of the situations, because I think for businesses this is really essential to be able to efficiently compete online and go for e-commerce, which is by definition very much cross-border, to have a common interpretation and to align our approach to these concerns. Thank you.
We have just time for one or two short questions.
Okay. Yes, sure. Okay.
Do you have a short question? Or it was very clear?
I just wanted to ask, I didn't hear anything about airlines. I know I wouldn't actually consider that an e-commerce, but I'm sure since it's part of the responsibility, I think everybody here and everybody in Europe sees this all happen with the airlines. So I'm just wondering if you have a comment to make about what's going on, because I saw hotels under investigation. Nothing about airlines. Why is that?
It's not, because it's simply not in our prerogative. So we're not doing airlines in my field. So what I can tell you is really, if you want to come back to you and have more detail, I don't want to now enter into this.
It's just a curious question.
No,
you didn't touch upon that. I saw hotels, and that kind of brought
No, actually for the services, so in terms of this geo-blocking regulation and all that, I was mentioning that the same rules apply, so that's absolutely the same rules apply. There is no differentiation in terms of what services, or it's hotel or airlines, but if you want to know more about really what targeted measures we have on airlines, that's
But it applies for products and services. Everything that was in your presentation covers both products and services.
Products and services.
Okay.
Products and services.
Thank you.